Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode. Today I've got Marck de Lautour on the show. He is a seasoned real estate veteran. He's based out of Kansas City. He owns SBD Housing Solutions. He's flipped over 2,000 houses. He's got over 700 rentals. He's got a vertically integrated company, and man, he's done some really cool stuff over his career that we're going to get into today. Marck, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brandon. Good to see you, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking a little bit before about New Zealand and how you're from there and just all the cool hiking. For those that don't know who you are, what's your story? How did you first get into real estate?
Sure. Quick story. Born and raised in New Zealand, went to a great high school that kind of encouraged an all-round kid. So kind of had an entrepreneurial flair from a young age. Classic middle child syndrome. Come from a loving family. Parents still married 53 years, and very well supported. They just taught us to, they would give us wings and then encouraged us to fly. And I think that's something that I took pretty literally. I flew all the way over to Kansas City based on a tennis on the back of a tennis scholarship to university. Played 4 years on the collegiate tennis team. Stayed on, got my MBA, and while I was doing that, I flipped a house and just went down to kind of read some books. Went to one boot camp course here in Missouri, and then kind of built a business and a career out of. This idea of just flipping houses. So I fell in love to a Kansas City girl, and we decided to stick around. And yeah, that's the Cliff Notes.
Man, so what does your business look like today? And then I'm going to kind of backtrack a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So we kind of have three tranches of business endeavors. Because we have kind of historically been a turnkey provider, we do have a property management company. I believe firmly that, a turnkey provider cannot be a turnkey provider without having in-house property management. So we have built that up, and to your point, we have around 700 doors under management. We are also flipping a lot of inventory. This Best Offer KC home buyer brand is our direct to seller entity, and we help homeowners escape the doldrums of ugly homes and homes that have been left unrehabbed or they're facing financial hardship. We do that around 250 homes a year in that bucket. So that's a pretty good sized team. Full direct marketing that then requires inbound lead management and sales guys in the living room and so conversion. So we're a full-on sales and marketing organization. And then lastly, where I spend most of my time is just on the development side. So we do small developments of new construction, focusing primarily on duplexes and fourplexes. We don't do single family. We're not speculative in that nature. Most of the stuff that we build, and we're very small, but we will do maybe 40 to 60 doors a year and just sell them to our existing investor base and put them into the property management company. We've found that new construction build to rent multifamily, small multifamily, duplexes and fourplexes is a pretty nice niche for our investor base.
Why is it that you think so many house flippers fail? I mean, you've obviously figured this out. You're one of the few. I got started in 2000, I think it was 17, and we started wholesaling and flipping houses back then. And the whole cash flow thing was very difficult. Like, we struggled with that, especially starting out with hard money loans. And eventually we were raising private money and didn't have interest payments. And it seemed like we did a lot. But we ended up having to pivot out of that because we went from flipping like $250,000 houses and making like $35,000 a house to flipping $450,000 a house and making like the same $30,000. And so we had everything measured, and the writing on the wall told us to pivot. Right, we went from 3,300 bucks a contract to 6,600. Instead of one out of every five appointments was a close, it was like one out of every 11. And so like the KPI data after like 3 years was telling us like, hey, this is getting super saturated. And we eventually started doing building and doing development stuff. But like, why is it that you think most house flippers fail?
Because the same habits that get you to the point of prosperity are the same habits that you have to break to become a better business owner. Wholesaling inherently is an extremely profitable, unorganized, low sophistication business. It's amazing to me that you can go make $30,000 by just sending a postcard in the mail, right? I mean, not many businesses can do that. Even if you're flipping cars or something or couches, you
Mm-mm.
you can't make the big rips that you do in real estate as with unsophisticated business practices. But that's what happens is you get a guru that teaches you no money down, no issue. Just,
Hmm.
you can text people and lock up a house over the phone and then turn around and if you've got a buyer on the back end, make a 20 or $30,000 rip without even knowing what you're doing. You don't even know how to flip a house.
Yeah.
So that inherently is, although it's the glorious American dream, it's fraught with disaster. And I think there can be delusions of grandeur. Once you start making some good money, it's like, oh, I'm really good at business. No, you've just kind of got a niche hack that you've got working on. To build a business, you need to create a culture of an environment that would require people to come in and rather than just be money motivated like you are as an entrepreneur, you have to break that and create a culture, an environment that would want people other than you to wake up every morning and come to the workplace and drive for higher meaning and a greater good. And that's why most people fail to transition and cross over from the solo entrepreneur to a business owner.
When you say the same habits that created the prosperity are the ones you have to break to get to the next level, can you give us some context?
Sure. So, as a solo entrepreneur, it's the grit, the grind. I'll do it myself no matter what it takes. I'm going to jump in and do it. It's the I can do anything. Any problem that's solved, I'm on it. I'm going to do it quickly and fervorously. And that's exactly the opposite. When you build a team, it's about creating a culture of accountability. And it's not just you that is the one that is responsible anymore. You have to lay down systems and structure and procedures and SOPs. Traction talks about it in rocket fuel, and Vern Harnish in Scaling Up talks about the benefits of having a COO. Most maverick entrepreneur, small business owners have all the drive in the world. But if they don't wrap that with the COO tendencies of patience, process, systems, and accountability, and it's effectively knowing your strengths and weaknesses. And once you do, it's rocket fuel, right? Like the visionary CEO with the operational expertise of a COO, and you can really go to the next level. But most people don't ever wake up and realize that and struggle with the big void that is left when people get burned out because people that work 9 to 5 and you pay them 50 grand a year don't want to come in and work at the same pace that you do. They want to leave it
Yeah.
they don't have that burning entrepreneurial desire. And letting people fail without railing on them and giving them KPIs that they can live into, giving them a one-page strategic plan, buying them into a vision long term, explaining the why behind what you're doing, not just being the fix-all. There's an old saying, stop being the hero who saves the day and start being the architect that builds other heroes. And those are the habits you need to break to get to the next level.
I really like what you said there. That stop, don't be the hero that saves the day, be the architect that lifts up. Say that again because that was really good.
Yeah, stop being the hero who saves the day and start being the architect that builds other heroes. It's the law of the lid, right? It's like your business will only rise to the level of the leadership that is allowing it to strive. And so, the biggest challenge for me in growing my team and elevating our ability, both performance wise but revenue wise, was getting out of their way, building and retaining top talent and then allowing them the grace to fail, giving them training and structure and feedback loop that would help them succeed in their position, and then trusting them to do their job so I could go work on other things.
One of the things that you said when we were first talking before getting into this, before we hit the play button here, was that you'd pivoted a lot. And
Yeah.
one thing that I've learned, I've been in this business since 2017, so you've got quite a bit of experience on me, is we've pivoted a couple times too. And I kind of mentioned a few minutes ago one of the reasons why we pivoted from flipping houses to doing new builds. Like our KPIs were kind of telling us it was getting oversaturated. It was a lot, and we're like, dude, writing's on the wall. And we built one house, made 3 times what we made, flipping houses, and we're like, hey, why are we flipping out? We need to build, and that was kind of like our little pivot moment. Bring us back. What was the first time that you had to pivot, and how did you know that you need to pivot. And I think this is really important because if you're a real estate entrepreneur, I don't know anybody that's been in the game a long time that hasn't pivoted multiple times.
Yeah, so three major pivots, and I mean probably four major pivots in my business. Okay, so I'll talk through them through briefly, and then you can go back and tell me where you would like to spend more time. I started flipping in 2001 was my first flip, and then after that it was, off to the races. I saw a niche and hammered it out, buying houses on the courthouse steps. But then I went through the global financial crisis in 2008, which the pivot there was that I was working with two other business partners at the time. One of them lost his job, and it was just a financial mess. And so that business partnership failed. And so I was back to square one. Like my financial backing that I had been relying on from two silent business partners that were kind of funding our operation and helping scale it now had gone back to zero. And that ended badly, and that's another story for another day. But I had to pivot personally and say, okay, what do I know? So that was out of desperation, that pivot, right? It was, hey, I'm back to square one. I have a business that I've been running for, the better part of 7 years. But now I need to figure out, what's going to be my next. So at that time, I pivoted, but I don't know, you probably don't remember. In 2008, this sounds really weird, but banks were not lending on real estate. It was
Yeah.
bizarre time. Like they had so much real estate on the books. They're like, we're not doing more loans. My goodness, we don't know where the bottom is. So that was interesting. So that's really when I pivoted to become a turnkey provider, was because my pivot through that was, look, I believe, and I believed wholeheartedly that and the guy behind you on the second shelf down there, Mr. Buffett, would say, when there's blood in the streets, go buy as much as you
Mhm.
can. And clearly there was, it was a bloodbath in 2008 from people losing their homes. And so not only was it a foreclosure crisis that we could go capitalize on, but the challenge was financing wasn't there. So I just pivoted to say, hey, I wanted to shout from the rooftops, opportunity, alert, opportunity. And so I would reach out to people saying, hey, look, what I know is I know foreclosures, I know how to buy in the courthouse steps, I can buy at deep discounts. And if we can hold on through my, building this property management company, I think we're going to be in a really good position. And so I was able to convince enough people to trust me with their capital. And so effectively I did JVs and private money deals. So where they would put up all the money, I would do all the work, and would put the asset in their name. They would pay me and just be a fee-based acquirer of assets that then wrapped into me doing the property management on the back end. So that was my first pivot, and kind of before I even knew the term turnkey provider, that's what I was doing. Is I was just foreseeing who would want to take advantage of this. And in fact, my first investors were international investors. They took advantage of the cheap US dollar and the cheap housing, and kind of double dipped on what was the global financial crisis and real estate in America. So that was first pivot. Then that runs pretty well. The other pivot was in 2022. Well, no, before that. So in 2017, auction.com came into the game and started, really impeding my ability to buy.
Mm.
They started advertising, what used to be not proprietary, but kind of a backdoor way of finding out how properties were coming on the courthouse steps. It wasn't widely publicized. So we had the system that we used to be able to scrape the legal newspaper records, put it into a Google Doc spreadsheet, do all the research on it, and then go and buy houses on the courthouse steps. And it was like me and maybe one or two other real players in the marketplace. So we could go buy 100 houses a year just by raising our hand with no marketing budget other than pulling some data and
Ah,
having a guy do it. So, that was pretty cool. But then auction.com came in and really changed the game, because they were, before you would Google an address, 123 Main Street in Independence, Missouri, and you wouldn't know anything about it. Suddenly you Google it, you're like, yeah, the auction's next week at 2 p.m. and the opening bid is 50,000, so it's like, man, you're giving away my data. So good for them. But I had to pivot through that time period and realized that then the hedge funds came in and started buying on the courthouse steps. So my whole acquisition stream was drying up, where before I was buying, and at that point I'd bought around 1,100 homes on the courthouse steps, and suddenly I could see that drying up. So I had to pivot away and work through becoming a seller direct home buyer, meaning now I'm going to send mail. I'm going to, do what's built now into a massive ad budget where we spend money on TV, radio, billboards, direct mail, PPC, PPL, like all the things, right? To try and get that same amount of volume through the business. So now when our cost per deal on the courthouse steps was, a couple of bucks, now it's like $10,000 cost per deal. I mean, it's a big ad spend, to be able to garner the level of volume that we're hoping to do. So that was pivot number two. Pivot number three. So now in 2022, interest rates go from 3% to 8%. So suddenly all of my investor base was, just going and saying to me, Mark, hey, look, we'd scaled to try and deliver the volume that they were wanting to buy and gobble up. And all of a sudden, interest rates went high and the cash flow was not great. And so, although we had been obviously pitching the four pillars of real estate, not just one, cash flow, it was cash flow, depreciation, appreciation,
This
and
was your turnkey business, right?
and leverage.
Turnkey.
Yeah, the turnkey business. So investors in my turnkey business that we were building suddenly dried up, and we had to pivot out a way to kind of get out of that mess. So yeah, there's always things that are pivoting and changing, and it's just constantly one thing after another. So now we've gone from acquiring all our homes on the courthouse steps to buying zero on the courthouse steps. We've gone from selling all of our homes turnkey to now we don't do much turnkey at all. And now we've pivoted into new construction development where I saw an opportunity for the new construction of the duplexes and fourplexes as a land acquisition stream as well.
What did you see that made the light bulb go off in the new construction opportunity?
The first one was opportunistic. I started penciling because inside Collective Genius, which is a real estate mastermind group that I'm a part of, full credit. I mean, a lot of my confidence in pivoting comes from seeing other practitioners in different cities doing the same thing and then
You're
talking to them
moving as a
about it.
group and everyone's seeing the same thing, feeling it and saying this is the direction. It gives you more confidence to do the
Yeah,
pivot.
or even looking at someone that, like, if someone wanted to get into turnkey, they'd come talk to me and I'd say, well, here are the five pitfalls you need to look out for, right? If I'm getting into new construction, I'd go talk to the new construction guys in the group and see what they're doing and whether it would fit for my business model. So you start just underwriting and doing things in a meaningful way, doing the due diligence, and that has certainly been a great avenue for me to be able to avoid. It's like an insurance policy, avoiding all the major pitfalls. And so I talked to a few guys in the group that were successfully fix and flipping, but I also talked to some local builders, and it's my contention that single family new construction, although there's still a massive shortage of housing, is still a little bit too speculative for me, and you can get stuck, with a lot of inventory. And I didn't want to take on undue risk given all my things that I had going on. But if I knew I had here's been my whole key to any success I've had, Brandon, I think, has been I've always had the buyer lined up before I was completed with the house. That's been my secret to everything.
Yeah.
Kind of like, back in the day, if someone was wholesaling, they're like, well, you can successfully wholesale if you have a buyer already lined up that's ready to buy, and you just go find what he wants, right? Well, same way with a turnkey provider, I knew what they were going to buy, so I just buy it, rehab it, and then they were ready there. So in the same way, I talked to my investor base, said, hey, new construction duplexes and fourplexes, here's the math. If I could deliver you a 7 cap on new construction, eliminating the vagaries of maintenance and
Mhm.
vacancy, would you be interested? And they all said yes. So I just went and built it and sold it. So it wasn't like I just like doing things that eliminate risk. And I thought that the new construction was appealing enough and sexy enough that my investor buyers would like to buy it. And that's what we've continued to do, is just fill the appetite, like create an appetite and then fill it.
Yeah. You de-risked it, took away the market risk by eliminating the speculation about having your buyer locked. I mean, we do the same thing. It's so funny. Pre 2022, didn't make sense to do that because it was worth one more once the asset was built.
Yeah.
Then it makes sense. You didn't want to do that. Now, like you definitely want to do that. You do not want to get stuck. We got stuck with a lot of homes built and sitting on the market in 2023. So we definitely felt that. What was it about new construction though? You said that the rehabbing turnkey business dried up. Why did the rehabbing turnkey business dry up, but the new construction still penciled?
Didn't say it dried up, but here's what happened. So when the remodel business we were selling effectively at a 7 cap, right? So we would kind of say, look, we'll give you a 7% yield, 14% cash on cash return, and a minimum of $300 a month of positive cash flow. That was kind of our shtick, right? we leaned probably too heavily into that rather than just pitching them on the benefits of buy and hold investing long term. And so, because we could deliver it, we was leaning into it as an industry leading turnkey provider. Well, then when interest rates went from 3% to 8%, you can't deliver a seven cap. You can't deliver 14% cash on. Well, the seven cap maybe, but you can't deliver the 14% cash on cash, and you can't deliver $300 a month of positive cash flow after debt. So suddenly we were not living into that, and just we had not done a good job of educating our investors through that. There's a little fear and
Yeah.
speculation in the market, and they just kind of were pausing, or we were stuck there with all this inventory. So the good news through all of this, Brandon, was that as you know, in 2022, well, post COVID, and then in 2022, with the scarcity of assets, like assets just kept climbing. So the other reason we didn't want to sell turnkey anymore is because the same asset that I could, pencil and sell to a turnkey buyer and a passive investor, a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer in California or Florida that wanted to invest in the Midwest in real estate is kind of our avatar. Instead of them buying it at 180,000, we would just turn around and flip it and sell it on the open market, and we'd get 210. So I mean, we were getting more by selling it because there'd been so much appreciation and lift in the market that although and rents just didn't escalate as quickly, and so yeah, it became more profitable and better business sense to just turn around and sell it on the open market. So that's kind of where we pivoted, was just selling stuff on the open market, right? So we didn't necessarily dry up our volume, but we just changed and pivoted our disposition strategy.
What's fascinating is it sounds like the core business model is always there. Pre '08, you were doing the house flipping thing. '08 happened and all the money dried up. So that's where turnkey was kind of born, and you were buying things using your unique method of scraping the data and doing the foreclosure or courthouse steps things. Come time 2017, auction.com rolls around, that kind of kills that. Well, now you got to go direct to seller and do marketing and buy that way. And I think you're still doing the turnkey stuff at this time. And then the interest rate rise in 2022 comes, and you're like, crap. Well, that kind of killed the turnkey cash flow business. Now we're going to get into doing new construction stuff. But the business model itself, you're acquiring distressed real estate or real estate at a significant discount, but where you kind of get the money from banks in '08 versus turnkey investors that are international. Where you're finding the deals, changes. Courthouse steps in 2017, auction.com comes in, versus direct seller. But the core business, it sounds like, is sort of the same, but the buyers, where you get the money, the market conditions kind of change. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, no, the core business is if you can value add, and that's why I think those that can actually fix and flip will have a long-term viable business. Those that only wholesale will pivot and struggle and come and go. But those that truly drive value by taking a rundown asset and bringing it up to today's standards, you're always going to have a viable business model, and that's what we've kind of stood the test of time. We have great contractors, good relationships, people that know what they're doing, and we're providing a valuable service to the community, which is, not just improving that individual asset, but obviously raising the value of the homes around it. So yeah, we feel pretty strong that if we can continue to rehab at a high level, we'll always have a recession-proof business, if you will.
Yeah, no, especially when you can pivot like that. That's amazing. I know you're doing some work with I think your local municipalities to kind of get the word out about wholesaling and how that whole industry is changing. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I know that wholesaling is it's gotten a bad term, and I think it's given the real estate investment industry, parts of it, a bad name, because you have these new wholesalers that go out and they find somebody who's in real distress and need somebody to perform on the house, and they're this new wholesaler that goes to some seminar and they put the home under contract, and then they don't perform, and it ends up putting the person in a worse position that they were in. So I know it's gotten a bad rap. Tell us a little bit about what you're fighting for and some of the changes that you're trying to make.
Sure. Yeah, in the state of Missouri, we are lagging behind the other states. There's been massive sweeping legislation already come through Oregon, Oklahoma, and Pennsylvania. Missouri's lagging a little bit. And this is not anti-wholesaler legislation. This is full disclosure legislation. We just want there to be the homeowners to be educated enough to understand that when just because someone says, I pay cash, I close quickly, well, do you?
Yeah.
We just want there to be a disclosure to say that the kid who's read a book or watched one YouTube video and is coming into someone's living room, these are real people with real problems.
Yeah.
And we just feel like, as a consumer advocate, we just need to explain to people that, look, you have to disclose that you don't have any money and that the only way that but you may be really good at marketing and you may have a buyer on the back end. Great. If you can, get rewarded for bringing a buyer and a seller together, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you fully disclose it. The other piece of the legislation that I would like to see push a little bit further is I do believe firmly, as do obviously some other states that have already enacted this, that like Illinois, Pennsylvania, you have to be a licensed real estate agent to be able to bring a buyer and a seller together on a piece of property that you don't own, and you're conducting real estate in a professional capacity, and that you should be a licensed agent. So what would that do? Well, at least then you adhere to a uniform code of ethics that the local board of realtors would hold you to. The National Association of Realtors is real big on of this and having a set of standards and principles that you would adhere to when meeting with customers and clients. And so this is all I'm trying to do is just bring an air of professionalism back into an industry that's just gotten a little far away from it. So again, I'm not anti-wholesaler, but I'm pro homeowner, pro full disclosure, and pro businesses that are doing it the right way.
Yeah, the industry definitely needs that. I know exactly what you're talking about. And, we probably made those same mistakes when we were first starting out. Though the cool thing was we were always able to deliver on what we said we would do with the homeowner, not make any promises that we didn't. We started wholesaling 10 years ago, and it's crazy to think that we've gone that far and everything. But that's a big problem is a lot of people that are doing it are not doing it authentically. They're not being honest about what they can do, and they end up putting people in a worse position than, where they are because they're calling you because they actually have a problem that really needs to be solved.
Yeah, Brandon, just further to that, just so that everyone is aware of like why this is an issue. I mean, we are here to pick up the pieces of failed transactions quite frequently. Obviously, when we transact on 250 homes, there's about 1,500 people that we talk to be able to get those 250 of actual homes that are people that we transact with and help out. So what we find is that there are those, let's say just put some real numbers to it. So we might go in and offer someone $200,000 for their home in its current condition, right? That's fair market value for the home in its current condition. Well, then you get a wholesaler come in who's been taught, hey, look, just lock it up because you can always retrade later. So they'll lock it up for 230,000, and the homeowner is obviously like, well, wow. I mean, why would I go with Mark's team at Best Offer KC when
Right.
this other guy's giving me 30,000 more? Of course, we're gonna do that. And so
Yeah.
they lock it up at 230, they shop it around, and they get offers of weird 200,000 from all of their buyers on the back end because that's kind of the fair market, current market valuation of the property. So let alone like we'll talk about like traipsing all of their contractors through the property when really it's all of their buyers and the inconvenience and kind of deceitful tactics those are. But then you have someone who then goes back to the seller at the last minute. They've already packed the U-Haul's in the driveway. They're at the closing table. And because they didn't put down any earnest money deposit and they have no skin in the game, they come back and say, "Hey, sorry, the market spoke, and I can give you 180,000, or I'm just going to walk away." So now you've got this
Yeah.
homeowner who thought that deal was sold at 230. Now they get not only getting retraded down way past what is fair, because this wholesaler still wants to get their $20,000 rip, so they're going to drop it down and close at 180 because they have a buyer lined up at 200. I mean, these practices are just deceitful and they're not right. And we're just trying to bring a little bit of light to this so that we can, and again, local municipalities, the statewide legislation. I was literally in Jefferson City, Missouri, the state capital yesterday, talking at the floor of the House of Senate hearing committee, excuse me, the House of Representatives hearing committee about this exact thing. And all we're asking for is full disclosure and then licensure for those that are practicing real estate.
Yeah. No, I love it. Mark, with all the success that you have, what's next for you?
Big dreams. I'm trying to grow the team, the leaders within me. So, I don't know if you're familiar with the Dream Manager program. It's kind of something I'm passionate about now, like giving back to those that are helping us grow this company. It's just a way of reinvesting my time and effort into growing leaders inside the org. So that's I'm pretty passionate about just getting to know at a deeper level the true wants and needs of the team members and helping them succeed in life, maybe even outside the four walls of our office. But beyond that, I've got another business that I'm probably going to roll up in 2027, that would provide be a bank, a financing arm for those that are looking to fix and flip. And I'm busy writing my second book. My first book, Mistake-Free Real Estate, was the passive investor's guide to winning with rentals. Currently, I'm writing Mistake-Free Real Estate, the active investor's guide to flipping for profit. So it's kind of gone from like as I've pivoted from like selling to passive investors and teaching them how to do that. Now I'm like, hey, if you want to flip a house, come, I'll show you how to do it. So.
I love it, man. I love it. You got a lot of really cool stuff going on and very excited about the second book. If people want to connect with you, learn more about any kind of opportunities you have, where can they go?
Yeah, Instagram, I try and stay pretty active on. I'm a little blend of personal and business, but so that's at Marck Delatour. And then, yeah, Facebook's a good follow. And then I do try, I took a year off of my podcast, as we restructured a few things in the business, you had to focus. But I'm firing back up the Mistake Free Real Estate podcast and would be welcome to people jump on there and kind of hear my thoughts. And my latest one that's dropping this week is actually with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, John Patterson, talking all about Missouri state laws with regard to real estate. So not only the wholesale law, squatter laws, the consumer protection stuff, as well as Missouri's hope that we will turn into a state of no income tax. So that's the big push in Missouri. They're flying over to your state from California, Brandon. There's a lot of Californians heading to Tennessee, and we're keenly aware of that. And I think some of the legislature is trying to get Missouri to be a no state income tax, so we'll really attract some of our high net worth business owners, so they don't just leave to Florida or Tennessee, and they can stick around here and drive the value that they do to the communities.
I love it, man. All right, guys, reach out to Mark at the handle if you got any questions or want to connect with him. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for sharing all your gold nuggets and wisdom today, Mark.
Thank you, Brandon.